Hello and welcome to my podcast, Lizzie Watches Yaoi. And I know we said that we'd finished the crossover event, but then I went and found a bonus episode of Vatican Miracle Examiners, an episode 13, a special OVA one-off that they released. So I've brought Gaia back with us to cross over with our Beneath Your Skin Demonic Possession podcast to talk about episode 13 of Vatican Mystery Examiners. And this one is called Witch's Soup. Dum dum dum. How are you today, Gaia?
I'm fine, thank you. And I'm so excited about this new episode. I'm so glad you found it. And yes, I'm ready to talk about it.
Yes, this was a great little find. We still haven't managed to find like translations for the novel or the manga into English. The most I found is it was released in France. But alas, I was never taught French. I do not know French. I actually know more Japanese than I know French. So I'd actually be better off with the original Japanese. The problem is I can't read kanji. So I would just be like, oh goodness, it would be a very long translation job if I tried to do it. But yes.
I can try to translate the French one, but yeah, it will take time to me too because I was good speaking French when I was in junior high, and then I somehow forgot everything I knew because during the high school and university, I never had any reason to keep speaking French. My mom has a degree in French culture and literature. I can ask her to help me in that, but it will be a long way.
Yes, well, if there's a will, there's a way. Somehow, hopefully, one day we will have the novel. But for now, we have our little bonus episode, which starts off with a witch brewing some kind of potion in her cauldron. She's got all her witchy stuff around. She's got a skull cane, and then in bursts some like hooded figures, and you're like, "Ooh, oh my goodness, what's going on?" We get our beautiful opening, and the one thing they've changed is that now one panel where normally Julia would have appeared in various guises is now the shadowy witch figure. So we're like, oh yes, we're definitely in witch storyline. And it opens with our beautiful boys being very domestic at home. Like, Joseph is clearly having some FaceTime with Lauren about something, and Roberto is just muttering away to himself. He's muttering away about field mice being burnt, and from their ashes growing fava beans, and char-grilled centipedes, and the mould from the dragons, and he's making some soup as he does this. And Joseph is just like, Roberto, are you okay? What's for dinner? And he's like, minestrone. Why? He's like, well, I was a little bit worried since you started talking about horse intestines and, like, dried centipedes going into dinner. I was like, yeah, just, the casual recipe for, like, minestrone. I mean, I don't know much about minestrone, but I'm pretty sure it has no entrails of, like, horse in it.
It only has vegetables.
Yeah.
It's a very innocent kind of soup. You put cabbage, potatoes, carrots, celery, and sometimes beans, but I don't like that version. But yes, it's just a vegetable soup.
So yeah, so no wonder Joseph's a little bit concerned about what they're having for dinner. But Roberto says that in Roberto's true Roberto way, he's found another secret rare book that's full of like weird mysteries and stories and probably something a bit sinister. And this new manuscript has a recipe for the witch's soup. And he was so intrigued and he got so lost like trying to decipher this book. He's had it stuck on the brain and he keeps repeating like what's going on. And Joseph is like, those are the ingredients to the witch's soup, no wonder. And of course he'd be distracted by like a new rare book. That's just so Roberto. Like, as long as dinner isn't like the recipe you've just been spouting, it'll be fine. So they're having dinner, lovely domestic dinner time, and Roberto tells them that the manuscript was by a witch called Bella Vacci. And during like the witch trials and the Dominican cardinals, strangely enough, pardoned her rather than like burn her at the stake, drown her. She kind of survived the witch trials, and it was like, well, this is a bit of a mystery. How did this witch, who was clearly practicing witchcraft and making potions, and got caught by like cardinals, somehow not get like tried for a witch or anything bad happened? And it was to do with she had somehow made this magical soup that had longevity and life-bestowing properties, and she herself was 102 years old. And apparently this soup was so powerful that she gave it to like 4 generations of popes, and each of these 4 popes had all had long lives. Now I'm going to go to you to the science of these popes. Were there generations of long-living popes?
They were, for the standard of the time, they all lived a long life. Who knows? Who knows what the popes in those times did? It's very strange for the Dominicans not killing people and not burning them just because they dared to disturb their normal lives. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice little story, and it reminds me of a witch we had in Tuscany around the same time Bella's stories take place. And she was called Costanza da Libbiano. Libbiano is a very small place near Lucca. This woman wasn't a witch. She was just an herbalist. And she used her knowledge of herbs to help curing people, above all, poor people living in her village. But of course, because she was a woman who dared to do what doctors couldn't do, so she dared to heal people. She was accused to be a witch. She went through a huge trial. She was tortured, but in the end, she walked away with her life. So, yeah, it somehow remembers me of this story, but she was forbidden to ever practice.
There we go. So maybe they combined these like kind of stories to make it. Well, they're discussing the ingredients over dinner, and saying how like some of these ingredients are going to be are very impossible. Like, some of them exist. You can definitely get horse intestines, but the mold that grows with the wings of a dragon, not so like easy to get hold of. And orange peels blessed for 300 years by fair maidens. Again, not the easiest things to get a hold of. But Joseph is overly excited by this whole thing, and his little innocent naive brain is just like, oh my god, science. And I think he forgets that he's a priest for a second, because he suddenly goes, oh my goodness, this witch's soup, this sounds amazing. I bet I could use science to get all these ingredients. We should make the soup. And Roberto's like, okay, Joseph, I don't really want to like quell your enthusiasm, but at the same time, you've just said we should totally make a witch's concoction, and I'm pretty sure the church is not okay with witchcraft. But Joseph doesn't seem to think he's making witchcraft. He thinks that, like, oh my goodness, if this is a wonderful, like, potion that can, like, elongate life, it'll be a major scientific discovery, and we have to do it for science. And Roberto reluctantly goes, okay, well, we're just going to go on this magical adventure with you. Why not? And so, yeah, Roberto heads off to San Marino, which is the home place of Bella and apparently the oldest republic in the world. I don't know much about San Marino.
Yeah, San Marino is like Vatican City, is a foreign republic inside the Italian territory. And it's one of the oldest republic in the world. It still stands. And if you want to go to San Marino to buy alcohol or cigarettes or even knives, you pay them a lot less than you would pay in Italy. But you have to be very careful, because you can't bring into Italy more than a certain amount of alcohol or cigarettes, because otherwise you are breaking the law and you can end up paying a lot of money for that. And no, it's still illegal to bring knives from San Marino, but a lot of people do that because they have beautiful knives there. They still have a huge blacksmith culture in San Marino, and they really forge beautiful swords or beautiful knives. But yeah, it's a little bit illegal to bring them.
Well, it seems like a very picturesque place, very pretty. And Roberto goes off to find Bella's house, which he does. And he's like, oh, this is all very much still intact. The door's a bit ajar. I'm going to wander in. And obviously, all the witch ingredients and things in jars, and the atmosphere is all completely in place, including like a snake in a tank. And he's a bit like, ooh. And then we see a witch figure. and she's muttering to herself, and she's coming forward, and Roberto's a bit like, what's going on? And she's a bit like, oh, wait a minute, you're not a tourist. And obviously, Bella's home is being used as a tourist site, as a tourist attraction, and Witch was just assuming Roberto was another like witch fan tourist that had come to visit the property, and she herself is Eleanor Campbell. I can't pronounce the surname. I'm just going to stick with Eleanor. And she herself is a witch enthusiast, and she is writing a book about the life of Bella Vacci. And she says the best way to write a book about her is to get into her shoes, live the life that Bella did, and be able to write this book. It seems like fair dues. It's, it's method acted for writing. And Roberto's like, yeah, that's fair dues. Meanwhile, Joseph seems to have come to a convent with the angriest looking nun. The angriest looking sister that's just like, you want what? And he doesn't seem fazed by the fact that this very angry nun is staring at him like, you what? And he's like, yeah, you're the only people that can help me. And I'm like, oh, please, Joseph, don't ask a nun for an ingredient in a witchcraft. No. Oh, well, you sweet innocent little soul that really doesn't realise quite what he's doing. But never mind. We cut back to Roberto and Eleanor, and they're exploring the house a little bit more, and they're saying how like the fava beans grown from field mouse, and there's fava beans outside, and Eleanor's saying like, oh yes, just like when Bella grew them, I'm also growing fava beans, but what I'm doing is the food that I buy for the snake, I'm taking a couple of the red mice and burning them and using their ash to substitute the like burning of field mice. And he's like, oh, that's fair enough. And he's like, oh, look at this weird cage that's just hanging up in the garden. And I'm like, oh yes, that's a very nice cage that's just hanging in the garden. It seems to have an array of small bones, and luckily Eleanor's been quite respectful. She says, I haven't touched them, I don't want to like disturb them, because this is a site and I'm trying to preserve its heritage. And I'm like, well done. I quite respect someone that comes in and goes, I'm going to live this life, but I don't want to disturb it too much. Obviously, this all goes a bit silly when they clearly walk in the cage, and the trope of Vatican appears. But they're thinking, oh, I wonder what all these birds could be. And Roberto is like, I have someone that can help. Let me take a picture. Oh, I've got an answer. And she's a bit like, well, that was fast. And obviously, like, Joseph is clearly either not very busy at the moment or just, like, super obsessed with all the weirdest thing. And he's like, aha, those bones. They belong to hawks and they belong to monitor lizards. And Roberto says these are the animals whose attributes would have made up what was a dragon. The talons of a bird of prey, like the jaws and the body of a Komodo, wings, and it's like this would have been the guardian beast that would have like guarded like the secret lair and possibly been where the mold is. That was like, it's treasure it's guarding, so let's go in and let's investigate. And he does, and he pulls some of the chains, and da-da-da-da, Vatican trope, there's a secret passage to a secret room. Because it wouldn't be Vatican Miracle Examiners without the secret room. And at this point, I'm thinking, like, this is an actual witch. Maybe don't just, oh no, you're just you're just going to walk down there. The last time you walked down a secret passage, there were traps that nearly killed you. And luckily you'd read the right book to know what was going on. But, you've been exposed to cocaine, like been nearly drowned, been in various traps, met poor unfortunate mole people. But no, you're just going to wander down into the witch's hidden lair. Well done, Roberto. No safety there at all. And they go in and they investigate, which is clearly like the witch's larder. It's got all her old supplies. Everything's covered in dust because it's obviously been a while. They find an old sacred pot. And they remember, like, from the manuscript saying that the water the witches use, like, has to be fermented in a special way. And they have to clean the altar. They have to put fresh water in the pot. And they have to offer it to a deity. And the deity is Taurus. And it is the hippo deity that in ancient Egyptian mythology was the symbol of, like, pregnant women. So this deity is sitting on a little shrine, this little hippo goddess, and they clean the pot, they wipe down everything, and they give the pot of water to it and say, we shall just leave that there for 3 months. And I'm like, off they go. So they go back upstairs, they seal the room, and Eleanor's like, oh, that was a bit of a weird god. And I'm like, well done, Roberto, because Roberta schools her. And he goes like, It's not a weird deity. That's a bit rude. And I'm like, well done. Well done respecting other people's cultures, religions. Like, you can't just because you don't understand something or don't know it, you can't go around calling it weird. He's like, actually, it's not weird at all because obviously this is the hippo goddess from ancient Egypt and like there's actual like real reason why she was worshipped and why she might be watching over a pot for long life because she represents like fertility and long health and like goodness. So, yeah, Eleanor's slightly scolded and she's like, oh, okay, we'll see about that. But then they hear another knock at the door. And Roberto knows it's going to be Joseph, and he's like, ha ha ha, let's, like, trick Joseph. I'm going to hide. Like, Eleanor's going to go up as a witch and, like, scare. But instead it kind of goes a bit wiggy, because as Roberto is hiding, instead of hearing Joseph go, oh my God, like at a witch, you hear Eleanor going, ah! And Roberto's like, what's going on? And there's Joseph, just standing in the door, like, totally ready for action, with his goggles, his backpack bursting at the seams, a giant net, and it's like, you are ready for expeditions, aren't you? Like, wow, he's gone full in on this, and Roberto's still a little bit like, isn't this a bit much? And he's like, and so Joseph introduces himself, and it's the cutest little scene, because he bows in wonderful traditional, and the things start falling out, and you hear him going, ah, ah, ah. But it shows a shot of Roberto and Eleanor reacting to this, and you can still hear the ah, 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 as things continue to just fall out and bonk him on the head. And you're like, oh, Joseph, you little adorable person. And it's just like, oh, you're so sweet. I don't know why the scene just made me giggle, made me smile. But Joseph has rushed there and apparently travelled the whole way from the Vatican dressed like this, much to Roberto's like, oh, my special boy, you're cute. But it has to be tonight, because tonight is the full moon. And Roberto's like, okay, what weird, crazy adventure are we going on now? And Joseph, explains how there's a native frog. And it's a native frog, which has 4 toes at the front and 6 toes on its back feet, just like one of the ingredients in the witch's brew, only comes out on a full moon in this area. And it's time to go frog catching. And they go off to catch some frogs in the middle of the night with their Vatican, fish wading outfits. And again, Joseph is well into this. He's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And this toad is amazing. But be careful. We have to wear goggles because it secretes a poison and it might get scared and spurt you in the face. And again, Roberto's like, I think this is going a bit too far. But you're having a nice time. So I'm clearly, literally doing this for you, boyfriend. This is all for you. And so he agrees to catch the toads. And obviously Roberto clearly is not the best mood about having to stand in a pond, ankle or thigh deep in, murky water in the middle of the night trying to catch a poisoned toad. And he's like, what am I doing here? But Joseph, with agility blessed by the heavens, as Roberto says, manages to catch one of these, toads. And he's like, look, I've got the toad frog. Yay! Isn't it amazing? Here, Roberto. And Roberto's like, thanks. Oh, and then obviously shenanigans and antics, and Roberto falls in, and it's like, oh no, he's in the water. And I'm like, oh, we didn't get the scene of wet priests or the obligatory shower scene. Where was our shower scene? They're covered in mud and slime and water, and it's probably cold and they're probably uncomfortable, but we didn't get our shower scene. And I was like, that's sad. Only 2 shower scenes in this season, and neither of them were a Roberto shower scene. I'm like, we just kept seeing Joseph in the shower, which is lovely. He's a well-formed individual, but I would have liked to have seen some Roberto in the shower, especially after falling in a disgusting pond. But yes, so back in the witch's house, in Bella's house, Roberto is eyeing up a snake. And I half expected Joseph to be like, Roberto, careful, it's a snake! Because it's Roberto and snakes, a bit of a bad track record. And Eleanor's a bit like, oh, don't you like snakes? And he's like, I feel sorry for the frogs. And I'm like, it looks like he's gotten over any fear of snakes. I think it's actually Joseph that's more worried about snakes. Roberto doesn't seem to actually be scared of the snake or wary of the snake. He just feels a bit bad that the poor frogs are in a tank next to the snake. And it happens that these frogs, when they're scared or they feel like their life is threatened, they secrete a toxin. And they need the toxin to secrete over the herbs for the soup, so they're putting them next to the snakes. They're in a permanent state of fear and anxiety, and they're just secrete, so they can get enough toxins. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with Roberto on this one. I feel a bit sorry for the poor frogs.
Yeah,
Nevertheless.
yeah, come on. I understand you need the toxin, but poor frog. It really looks scared to an inch from his life. Come
Yeah.
on. It's like, oh my god, 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 the snake, the snake, the snake, the snake. Okay, come on.
Yeah. It's not
I
like the
hope
frog's
that
going to understand that the plane of glass is glass. They don't know what glass is. All they can see is snake.
snake. Yeah, indeed. And I think things are even worse for the poor frog because it's waiting for the snake to attack. But of course, the snake can't attack because of the glass, but it doesn't know that. So it's like, please, please, make it fast. At least that. Make it fast.
It's slow
No?
torture.
Still no? 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 Still torture? Why am I being tortured like this?
But yes, they decided that while the frog is secreting, they need some of the other ingredients. And it turns out that, like, you could just order them from, like, a witch's blog site. It's like, you need centipedes, you need horse intestines, you know, you need, like, a dried up snake. We'll order it. And they're like, okay, we can order all these things in. It seems fair enough. But Roberto's like, there's still a couple of ingredients that we're not entirely sure of. Like, how are we going to get these, like, orange peels from fair maidens? And Joseph's like, ha ha, I've done that. I asked that, like, the nuns at the holy convent to pray over their orange peels, and then I put them in a dehydrating, like, machine to make it look like they've been aged by 300 years and made the nuns pray at it. And I'm like, how did you convince these nuns? And even Roberto's like, that Mother Superior, you got her to be involved in this. And it's like, yes, somehow definitely did. I don't mean, it's such a lot of effort to find, like, one of those dehydifying, like, dehydration cooking devices that ages food and get nuns to pray at it. I'm hoping it was at a kitchen that was maybe in the nunnery or somewhere, and these nuns weren't turning up at some random, like, kitchen just praying at some orange peel. But yes.
Even because I
Oh,
have a feeling those nuns are of the order that are forbidden to leave their
yeah.
convent. So that would have been a little bit harder, and the Mother Superior would have never allowed her nuns to leave the convent. So, yeah, yeah. And at the same time, I'm pretty sure the Mother Superior was one of the nuns praying in front of
Oh,
the device. And yes, I am with Roberto in this. You had the Mother Superior agree to this, and you can see her face. I mean,
yeah.
when she said yes, I'm pretty sure she only did it to get rid of Joseph, and she was thinking, these priests, they make no sense to me.
I especially don't think the nuns would have done it if they realised that it was an ingredient in a witchcraft spell. But you know,
I think they never found out.
no, no,
I'm pretty sure they never found out. Otherwise, the Mother Superior would have been the one burning Joseph
yes.
without a trial, without
It's like,
questions, just burning him and get rid of him.
it's like, Joseph, you're a priest, not a witch. You're going to get yourself burnt at the stake here, dude. You really are. But now they have all the various ingredients they need. So they start making up the soup. You know, they've char grilled some centipedes, they've scraped some mould out of an old pot, they've got the weird not father beans, yes, the father beans have fermented themselves. There's some horse intestine, there's some orange peels, there's some secreted toxin herbs. I mean, it all sounds delicious. And they put it all together and they leave it to, like, ferment and to cook it all up, and it just sounds gross. Sounds gross. But Roberto's obviously a whiz in the kitchen because he manages to make it look not gross and serve up this beautiful golden amber soup for them all to try. And the three of them just casually eat it. And I'm like, oh my god, you're just gonna, no science, no lab, not in a, like, secure facility. The most they have is Joseph going, I've got the emergency room in speed dial just in case we poison ourselves. And I'm like, there's literally, like, frog poison in this soup. Like, oh my god, and you're just gonna be like, cool, let's just eat it. And I'm like, if you don't get poisoned, you're going to get burned at the stake for witchcraft. Like, holy moly, this doesn't seem like the most intelligent idea, but obviously Roberto doesn't want to say no to Joseph's happy little science face, and he's kind of curious about the magical soup.
I have to admit, I would be more grossed out by the horse interiors than the poison from the frog.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, mold. I love gorgonzola cheese, so I don't have many problems with mold. Okay, no, the ashes of the centipede, that too would gross me out. But yes, more of all, I think I would be grossed out by the horse's interiors because,
But yeah.
No, thanks.
And I wouldn't just delve into the soup. I'd probably run some tests on it to make sure it's not poisonous. At least put a PHP piece of paper in it to see, like, what its, like, levels are and if it's going to, like, burn your insides out.
Come on, they are protected by God himself.
Yes, of course.
They come from the Vatican. Never mind that they are basically going into witchcraft and everything the church say no about, but hey, yeah, but they still have God's protection. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason why they didn't end up dead.
Yes. Well, they try the soup, and apparently it's delicious, which they're a bit shocked by, and they start piecing the flavours together. And Joseph says that it's got a flavour similar to that you get in miso. And then they just start discussing how the fermentation process causes a mould, and in Japan is known as the koji mould. And this mould is resistance to alkaline, so that when they cleaned everything up, like all the other like more fungal and nasty moulds gone, but this one has a healing property. And if you know much about like Japanese food and Japanese culture, they have very long lifespans. The Japanese do not age very fast and they live for a long time because of the healthy food properties in the way they cook, the way they ferment, and these certain ingredients that come out from things like koji mold and the fermentation of beans and things. So they're like, oh, so the soup, you start thinking, so maybe the reason people who ate the soup lived a long time is because it's kind of like Japanese cooking. And then it further explains that some of the other ingredients, particularly things like the scorpion and snake skin and horse intestine, all come from Chinese medicine and are meant to have properties such as reducing fatigue, warding off disease. And you slowly start realizing that all the ingredients are from various like Asian cultures, but somehow this witch managed to put it together in a European style to reinterpret, but also remake like ancient like Chinese and Japanese medicine. And actually she's made a medicinal soup, which is why it kept like priests, like not priests, the popes alive for so long. And they seem to find this very funny. And you're a bit like, why is this so funny? And poor Eleanor, who started writing all the ingredients and all the information, is just doodling absolute like shit now. And they're giggling. And Joseph gleefully tells us that it's because of the toxins from the toad. And it has like properties like burfin and stuff in it. And basically they're like sedatives, but they're also like slightly chemical. And they give you a sense of alleviation and they release serotonin. And you're like, this is why people lick toads, isn't it? They lick toads to get high. Joseph, have you just allowed Roberto and yourself and Eleanor to eat a freaking like LSD soup, basically? And you're like, oh my God, they're high. So what do? They drink the rest of the soup. Because there is nothing like, oh, this soup has got drugs in it and it's going to give us a high. Should we just drink it all? And I'm like, this is the least priestly thing you've ever done, including make the soup in the first place. You are now tripping balls.
If the popes did it, I don't see why they should stop now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if priests get drug tested, because these guys would be like, oh no, because they've seriously got a load of drugs, because they literally just get high and drink all the soup.
As long as they don't drive back to Vatican City and they are not stopped by the police and tested for drugs and alcohol, I think they are going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, they do have the most innocent party ever because they're just all far too cute, where they just literally like sing and dance. But yeah, Oh, so Eleanor's having a whale of a time going, witches are the best, witches are the best, and having a wonderful time. Roberto's on tambourines doing a jig, and his dance consists of like jumping about and repeatedly going, Joseph, Joseph, Joseph. It's like, yeah, well done, you just cheer Joseph on. And Joseph has decided to sing in prime numbers. So he literally just starts singing all the prime numbers because, of course, he's a genius and he thinks it's hilarious. Just I can't believe they drank soup and went high. When I watched this, I was not expecting that. I'm like, you're priests for the Vatican. I know you're. I also think you're gay and in love with each other, but now you're doing witchcraft. Now you've worked out it's not witchcraft. You're still getting stoned on drug soup. Like priests don't go around getting stoned on witchcraft recipes.
Or at least we think they don't. We
No.
don't know.
It's not really my association with priests from the Vatican's getting high on, and having a little party. Oh
Yeah,
dear.
yeah, they probably don't do that, but we will never know.
No, no. Well, they've obviously recovered from their ordeal, and they think back on it fondly and be like, "Oh yes, our medicinal soup." And Joseph is playing one of his games with Lauren, and they're like, Joseph is close to winning, and Lauren's like, "Aha! So I got the book." And I'm assuming that the two idiots in this book were you and your partner. And Joseph is just like, oh, I've never seen him quite so like expressive in the like, oh no, I've been caught doing something naughty. And you're like, oh God. Yeah, like he's never looked like he's done something wrong before. It's the first time you see him in complete like, oh no, hand in the cookie jar. And he looks a little mortified and a little terrified that Lauren's worked it out. And he's like, yeah, no. So the soup and like and its properties, and he's like, and Joseph is just like, just please don't tell anyone. And Lauren obviously wins the game because Joseph is so distracted by the fact that like he got caught and he has to go and tell Roberto. He's like, Roberto, Lauren knows, and Roberto's like, it's okay. Maybe we shouldn't have called ourselves after Detective Bill's surname because like Lauren is going to know who Detective Bill is. Maybe that was a bit of a dum dum, so that when Eleanor published the book, we should have really changed our names a lot further. But you know what? It's going to be our little secret, and it's like we won't tell anybody because obviously, like, if the Archbishop finds out, we're going to be in serious trouble because, you know, witchcraft and drugs, you know, normal Vatican priest behaviour. So they kind of go very cutely going, our little secret. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, if this is the kind of like stuff you get up to in your spare time, what other little secrets? I mean, I know what other little secrets I'd like to read fan fiction about, but the fact that they could just casually go, let's make the spell and then let's get high and then let's just eat all the soup and have a little bit of a like a psychotic trip. But they think they're just going to keep it a secret and go for ice cream because that's what they do. And they do say that, like, you know, we've been saved by the grace of God and it's God that directed us to do this, you know, thank the Lord. And I'm like, I'm glad you think God wanted you to make a witch soup and get high in a cottage, but, you know, that's good. But yeah, they're going to keep it to themselves and they're going to go eat ice cream and go to karaoke again, and it's all very cute. And then you get this beautiful little after credits scene where they reiterate the fact that they're going to keep it a secret and it's going to be their little secret and they're all cozied up. And then the last frame you see of the show is a chibi version of them sitting on the sofa and they're like asleep on top of each other and their little sleepy voices are like, oh, Roberto. Oh, Joseph. And I'm like, oh, they've fallen asleep calling each other's names on the sofa. They're so cute and they're so in love. And it was just an adorable little extra episode.
Yeah, it was very cute. And we just found out that four popes just got high and lived a long life stoned out of their mind, probably. So yeah, we can see why the Vatican wants this to be kept a secret, and that's why probably no one will ever go after Joseph and Roberto for what they did. So yeah, that was nice. It was cute, and it was a very simple but beautiful episode to end the series. I would love to see more about them, and hopefully in the future someone will make more episodes.
But at least you got to see them being cute and domestic and just like Roberto just obviously his love of Joseph, and it's like clearly he did not want to initially start off on this weird journey, but Roberto is like, oh, you know what, Joseph, I can't say no to that lovely little face that's going for science. Faith and science will have a way, and he's like, fair enough, let's go on the. But I still think it's like, oh my god, if you know there's like drugs in the soup, why did you eat the rest of it? Oh, well.
They did it for the world because they didn't want other people to find the remaining soup and drug themselves. So
Yeah.
they had to sacrifice themselves and finish it.
Yeah. And be like, yes, we've done this. We've done our duty. We're just going to keep it a secret from the rest of the church because, yeah, it's their little secret. Oh, cute boys. Anything else to add, Miss Gaia?
No. Just that it was a pleasure to watch this episode too, and it was a pleasure to talk about the whole series with you, Zoe.
Oh, it has been lovely, and this was such a nice series, and I do think people need to definitely go out and watch it. And also, if you are interested in demonic possessions, exorcisms, then check out me and Gaia's podcast Beneath Your Skin for demonic horror movies. And also, if you like Yaoi, check out the rest of my Yaoi videos on my YouTube, Let Zoe Spoil You. But for now, byes.
Bye. Thank you for listening.